Starting, says starting. We're going to hit the recording here in a minute. Okay, live stream is starting. Hello, people on YouTube. Thank you very much for joining me. We're going to begin this live webinar in a minute. I'll be recording for about 30-40 minutes. And then I will be open for questions and answers you can chat with me on the live stream, or you'll be able to find me also on from my website. I'll have to stream from the front page of my website, khabirsclinic.com, which you can see the information. I'll put the information and links to my clinic and my company, Urban Teas, where I sell some herbal products on my website. Now, take note, all the products I'm covering today are not for sale on my website, Urban Teas. These are very specialized products, and they're only they can only really be prescribed. And particularly when we talk about IBS, you know, sometimes in the middle of the treatment, I have to change the products. And even me, I'm getting used to using different products, customizing different products. IBS still very, very tricky. And as the person heals and improves, then, you know, the formulas have to improve and the diet needs to become more open. So we will talk about that and some home remedies. So we're going to begin the recording now. And I won't be answering any chats while I'm doing the recording, but you can chat. I'll stay on afterwards, both where I'm streaming now and on YouTube, where I'm streaming. Okay, we're going to begin the recording now, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for being here. And let us begin. And everybody who registered for this webinar, of course, will receive a link to the recording. And those on YouTube, you'll be able to find it again on YouTube. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me for this live webinar on dietary and herbal treatments for IBS. We're going to talk about the different types of IBS according to Ayurveda. Ayurveda is very sophisticated. It's healing and treating all health conditions, even all those health conditions which the medical world says are untreatable. A good Ayurvedic doctor and herbalist is well capable of treating these. And IBS and ulcerative colitis and other inflammatory colon conditions are a perfect example how Ayurveda works beautifully and in treating this and healing the colon from this inflammatory condition. So we'll talk about these different types or different stages of IBS or irritable bowel. We'll just call it inflammatory colon condition from this point, because this is the way we look at it. We don't need the medical terms. Then we're going to talk about triggers, and most important, we're going to talk about the diet, and then we'll talk about the herbal remedies. But I want to say right up front, this condition is not really treatable without the herbal remedies. In the advanced stages, maybe in the very early stage where you're just getting a little loose stool, it's possible to quickly change your diet and remove some of the triggers that we're talking about today. But in the advanced stage, particularly once there's bleeding, you will find that it's a very difficult condition to treat. In fact, even I have testimonials from medical doctors, which I'll show you here in a minute, and who have said that they're unable to treat it and gave me a testimonial. We can take a look at the testimonials here. We can see that I've been very successful in treating IBS, irritable bowel, ulcerative colitis for many years now. If you go to my website under Khabir's Clinic there, under testimonials, and you go down, 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 I got a lot of testimonials, hundreds of them. Go to colon-related testimonials. Then if you go down, first one, IBS, right there. This person was out of New Jersey. You know, Khabir helped me heal my gut, and now I'm doing much better. Followed the herbal and diet program for 4 months. And after years of IBS and gluten intolerance, I'm now able to live a much improved life. And I'm still careful with my diet, and I'm still using the herbs, but I've learned how to eat for my dosha and how to keep the debilitating IBS symptoms under control. And this is a very interesting point. I am now able to tolerate gluten again. I get people all the time that say I'm gluten intolerant, I'm gluten intolerant. And I tell you, it's more of the bad gluten, of course, with, bad wheat with glyphosate and other chemicals. That doesn't help. And that's part of the cause, but it's really inflammation in the colon, early signs. This is very good because I have a testimonial right here of a person who thought they were gluten intolerant and now say, nope, after I treated them, they were improved. She goes on to say, I tried many approaches with no avail and found a friend forwarded me my website, did a Zoom appointment, thought he may be able to help a bit, but it turned out his knowledge went much further than that. I felt like having my life back and no longer spent hours in the morning with IBS symptoms, annoying hemorrhoids, and overall gut discomfort. Much gratitude to Khabir and his helpful staff. I highly recommend his Ayurvedic approach to IBS. Well, I didn't make up this approach. I mean, it's an Ayurvedic approach I learned from Ayurvedic doctor in India. So you can thank Ayurveda, the ancient healthcare system, the most sophisticated healthcare system in the world. And it is noted that hemorrhoids is very common along with IBS because it's also an inflamed colon condition. So we could say this stomach ulcers, hemorrhoids, and ulcerative colitis and IBS, they often go together. Okay, here's another person here, right here in Texas, not far from me. She had a ulcer and IBS. She was rushed to the ER with severe pain, and doctors gave her something to reduce acidity. And of course, the diet, teas and herbs have helped me within 3 days. So she's saying within 3 days, she had no more pain. People get fast results from these treatments because I know what to give. And you can see that many people are guessing. I see these support groups online and social media, and there's a lot of people guessing. They're asking each other. And this is very dangerous because everybody's condition is quite different. And even me with my experience, I still have to think about what foods to give a person. There are triggers. There are certain foods that are no, but it depend on the stage. You don't want to over limit the diet, which is what a lot of people do. So she can see a huge improvement already, and I'm only 1 week into taking the teas and herbs. Thank you for all your help. One more here. This one here, this man, he's a MD, and he had ulcerative colitis, and he said I resolved it in a couple of days. Now he says, I'm an experienced medical doctor for 39 years. He got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. He went to Sinai. He saw a world-renowned gastrologist, and they treated it with prednisone. But then he's in the specific carbohydrate diet, and this FODMAP diet is also used. By the way, this FODMAP diet is not correct. Specific carbohydrate diet is also not correct. And of course, people are obsessed with these diets because this is what's been told to them. And I say, well, did you get better? And she goes, only a little bit. But so you have to let go of these other diets. They're not able to treat it. And of course, when he came off the prednisone, it continued his symptoms of ulcerative colitis, bloody diarrhea. This was a very serious case. He had it for a long time. And then his gastrologist wanted him to go on Remicade. And being a medical doctor, he was fully aware of the horrendous side effects of Remicade. So that's when he met me. I had a big appointment with him. I gave him instructions. I gave him herbs. I sent him home. And that's where he said, I resolved the diarrhea in 2 or 3 days. Blood in the stool and gas continued for up to 8 weeks, but then got better. Finally, symptom free. And then he talks a little bit more about it. He gained 10 pounds, plenty of energy. So we can see there, that's from a medical doctor who's explaining that they had no cure for this condition. So that's a good point to keep in mind when you're taking dietary guidelines from an institution that has no cure for your condition. So let's talk about this four types, basically, from Ayurvedic perspective. First, this is when you just get a little loose stools. Like I get clients like this every day. I had one today. and they had long history of constipation their whole life, maybe even diverticuli, maybe they even have hemorrhoids. And then they start to get these loose stools. Now, they don't think too much about it. They're more worried about the hemorrhoid. They don't even mind the loose stool. But that's not a good sign, that you're getting these loose stools, because these loose stools are the early sign of inflammation in the colon. And just like the client I had today, she had inflammation in the muscles and the joints, and that's pretty much why she came to me, was a muscle pain, joint pain. So this is an interesting point. Our colon is a type of muscle. I mean, it has peristaltic action and everything. I mean, it's not blood tissue, it's not bone, it's not nerves. It's got nerves, but it's a muscle. So when you have muscle pain, when you have inflammation all over your body, joint pain, muscle pain, then your colon is inflamed. So they often go hand in hand. So this person was at joint pain, not too bad yet, but she was catching it in the bud. But she also had hemorrhoids, common, inflamed colon, and she started having loose stools when she had a history of constipation. That's the first sign. Little constipation, little diarrhea, little constipation, little diarrhea. People don't take it too seriously. Even if they had a history of not being constipated, then they start having like 4 or 5 loose stools a day. And they still don't take it seriously. But that's the first stage, just some inflammation in the muscle. And often we can see other conditions that go along with it. Like I said, hemorrhoids, bleeding or not bleeding, internal or not internal. And by the way, I just did a webinar on hemorrhoids, so you could find that. It's a different treatment, but a lot of the triggers are the same. The triggers for hemorrhoids and the triggers for IBS are identical, so keep that in mind. And now the next stage, we could say, is it's just progressed, and the only real difference is more loose stools and pain. Like when there's not much pain, people don't care much. That's why there is pain, to wake you up, make you do something. Like the client today, she wasn't going to come in unless she had pain. So she had pain, so that's why she came in. If no pain, she wasn't going to come in. She didn't have pain in the colon, so she didn't worry about it much. But when the pain comes to the colon, then they start worrying about it. So this is maybe the second stage. And probably at this point, the doctor would diagnose it as IBS. Now, the third stage is you start getting diarrhea, and you start going 5-6 times a day, and every morning you're on the toilet, and there's constant pain with almost everything you eat. Now it's getting serious. Fourth stage is now there's bleeding. So you've got diarrhea, bleeding, and pain. And still, some people can still have a little constipation mixed in there. So, and there can be other symptoms like mucus and other side effects like acid reflux, heartburn, etc. So these are the stages. And actually, when it's bleeding, then of course it's called ulcerative colitis, but we'll just call it an advanced stage. It's the same condition. It's just, there's a pathology. It's just slowly getting worse, and people just don't do anything until the pain comes, but it's coming. And sometimes I tell people and they go, oh no, I don't want to worry about that now. Just treat this, but they'll be back. Unless they get the inflammation down in their whole body and change the diet, they'll be back, because it doesn't go away if you continue what you're doing. Then unfortunately, people do a lot of guessing and try different things, and this changing the diet radically also can even be a cause. So let's talk about what are the causes. And these are very much related to some of the triggers, but let's speak in general terms of the causes. First, hot spices, chili pepper, cayenne pepper, and raw garlic. I had a guy who loved raw garlic. And he just ate raw garlic. He thought it was the best thing in the world until he started getting bleeding out the rectum. And the doctor, actually, he's from Pakistan, so he'd been eating chili pepper his whole life. So you're not going to get the condition right away. He'd been eating spicy chili peppers his entire life. And then only later in life did he get this condition. But unfortunately, the Cedars-Sinai Hospital forgot to tell him to stop eating the chili pepper. So that was a big problem. And then even when he stopped the chili pepper, he didn't realize that even garlic makes it worse. And then once you're bleeding, you make turmeric. Turmeric will make it worse, because anything hot at that point. Once you're bleeding, then you got onions, garlic, turmeric, ginger. They're all out. See, that's why you have to pick the diet based on the individual. But once there's bleeding, it's way more complicated. But before the bleeding, in the early stages, you can just eliminate this, like chili pepper, very hot spice, and still leave the mild spice. It depends on the individual. There's really two major types, and I'm going to show you, we have two different formulas. One where there's a lot of diarrhea and heat, and another type where there's a little bit more constipation and diarrhea mix. We have two separate formulas for this because they're so distinct, and the diets are so distinct. So you've got these 4 stages, and then you also have 2 major types. In Ayurveda, we call it Pitta type, where there's heat and burning and loose stools and going to lead quicker to bleeding. And then the Vata type, where there's more dryness, hard stools, some loose, hard, some loose, and there's no burning sensation, and the person tends to be more cold. They'll do a little better with some warm, spices like ginger and warm foods, little onions. But the Pitta type, right from the beginning, even in the early stages, has to avoid these ginger, garlic, onions, turmeric, and things like that. So other triggers, here's another trigger or cause. We'll talk about cause. Triggers are more specific than causes. The next one, you're going to surprise you on this one. Raw food diet. Oh yeah, we get even 20-year-olds who've been doing the raw vegetables. Which raw vegetable? The worst for this condition, which of course you have to leave out once you have it. But if you do it for a long period of time, can cause it. And that is the cabbage family, raw cabbage family. That's cabbage, cruciferous, cabbage, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts. So I've had people who were doing kale juicing, a couple of years. You don't get it from one time. You have to do it a couple of years. I had a couple 20-year-olds, and that's how they got it. Raw kale just tears up your colon. Now, the funny thing is these people had a lot of gas and bloating and abdominal discomfort for a long time. They just didn't do anything about it because, hey, kale's a superfood. Just keep on going. So their body was really telling them for a long time, this ain't working. We're not digesting this. So that's a cause only, of course, for these type, and cold. Cold makes it even worse, but so there's a lot of smoothies. Smoothies can be big problems because all crazy food combining can be a big problem. And once you have it, you have to be really careful with your food combining. And there's no cabbage family at all, none, particularly on the Vata type who has the constipation. 0, no cabbage, cauliflower, kale. The Pitta type, we don't do any nightshades, anything acidic, nothing sour. Lemon juice can make it worse if you're Pitta. Lemon, lime. Vinegar will really hurt if you've already got ulcerative colitis. And I see people trying on these blogs, I see people suggesting apple cider vinegar. Whew. Wow, you have to be careful taking this advice. So what are other causes? Well, in Ayurveda, they just say irregular eating at irregular times, changing up your eating times all the time. But basically, it's dry foods like crackers, chips, protein bars, really dry things. This leads to the Vata type. So first you get the constipation, these hard, dry stools, like golf balls. Then you get some diverticuli, maybe diverticulitis. Then you get hemorrhoids. It's a little pathology. This is tearing up your insides of your colon. And then you're doing other things, other triggers that are making it worse. And then it moves along its course. It's not a condition that, appears quickly. It's taking some time for the inflammation to increase, for the damage to the colon to take place. That's why you just get little loose stools, then you get more diarrhea, then you get more pain, then eventually it just keeps going. You get the bleeding. So, and just too much acidic foods like vinegar, pickles, all have to go, particularly for the Pitta type with the loose stools. So the main triggers, this is important. Coffee. That is a killer when you got ulcerative colitis. And now we see a lot of these fad drinks talking about gut health using coffee. Can you believe it? They're using mushrooms, which you also want to stay away from when you have autoimmune conditions and really inflammatory colon conditions. So now there's people promoting, mushrooms and coffee. And to make it worse, they put chocolate in them. And they even say it's for your gut health. Well, coffee's a trigger. Mushrooms can be a trigger depending on which one, but generally they throw in them 4 or 5 of them. And then coffee, big trigger, stimulating, inflammatory. I know it's been promoted as a superfood. Well, it's not. It's inflammatory. So even if you had joint pain, I would take out the same ones. The coffee, I'll put you on green tea if you're sleeping okay. The chocolate's got to go. The nightshades have to go. Those are all go, even if you just have joint pain, not even colon pain, just joint pain. Now, of course, if there's a lot of gas and bloating and constipation, we're going to take out the cabbage family. So the basics is nothing dry once you have it. Dry, hard stools. We can see animals get this too. You see a lot of animals, your cat, your dog, they have blood in the stool. That's from the dry food you're giving them. You know, I have a lot of animals here on the ranch, and I give the cats and the dogs, I put ghee on their food to not be too dry. And I always try to put like a little milk or water with some of their dry food. Even though they don't eat it all, at least if they're having some discomfort, they'll go for that soft, dry food in the water. Otherwise, you're just tearing up their guts, giving them this dry food day in and day out. We're not even talking about the poor nutritional value that you have in pet food. And the big cause of why so many pets, you know, get cancer is from poor quality pet food. Now, I have high quality cat food and dog food, and I do a lot of raw meats and raw meat for these carnivorous animals. But, you know, who can afford to give your cat and dog raw meat all the time? So I got to get this dried meat. You know, I use this one brand that's got dried taste of the wild with dried wild animals, but it's still dry. So then I put a little milk on it or a little water on it, or best is just pour ghee on it, or sometimes an oil like sunflower oil. You have to be very careful which oils you give animals. Many oils are heating, and if it's very hot out, it will aggravate them. So anyway, even cats and dogs are getting IBS from dry. Remember that, dry. So if you've got constipation, you've got colon pain, you got to stop those dry nuts. You got to stop that dry protein bars. You got to stop that granola, and everything you eat has to be soft. Soft. Just remember that. It's very simple. Soft. Now, if it's really advanced condition, like when you're bleeding, you have to be careful even with strawberry seeds because they have a little seed on the skin. That could tear you up. Sunflower seeds have a little point. So depending on how bad it is, you can, I try not to be too restrictive. If I can catch it in the early stages, you can just take out these triggers, coffee, chocolate, hot spices, and things, and then give them anti-inflammatory herbs to bring the inflammation down in the whole body, and then they can recover. That's the early stage. But by the time you get to the bleeding stage, now you have to be careful, even with the fruit. No sour fruit at all, only sweet fruit with no little seeds, like strawberries have seeds. So it has to be soft, has to be sweet. Sweet is good, not sour, sweet, and also oily. That's why you notice a lot of people with IBS, they can eat avocados and they can eat egg whites because it's soft and oily. But you also should always avoid cold things. So that's how a lot of people got IBS, is by having cold, raw vegetables mixed with fruit, because you have 3 things going wrong with that smoothie. Is 1, you're doing raw kale, which is known to give you gas, bloating, and eventually tear up your colon. 2 is cold. Cold's always bad for your digestion. It dampens the fire, it makes things weaker, and you're never able to completely digest. So all cold foods, cold smoothies are bad. And 3rd, they're mixing fruits and vegetables together, so that's really poor food combining. So you've got 3 factors there. Raw cabbage family, which is never a good idea, even though it's popular, and in California. And then you have cold, which is never good. And then you have this bad fruit combining, which even Hippocrates said mixing fruits and vegetables together will create digestive problems. So, you know, everybody can do some of these things once in a while, but when you start doing these for years, then you start to have these problems. And it does take a while. So let me talk about a few products here that I have. And like I've said, you can avoid the triggers. You can change your diet. You really have to listen to your own body to some degree, but you shouldn't be trying other things and trying this FODMAP diet, this simple carbohydrate diet. These are not effective. Not effective. The herbs the foods that I told you, soft, mushy, warm foods, sweet potato, squash, zucchini, fine, perfect. And if you have diarrhea, we can give you white rice with a little yogurt. If you have bleeding, no yogurt, no pickles, no sour vegetables. So once you have bleeding, it gets more tricky. And if you're constipated, then we do soupy brown rice. Soupy brown rice. And if it's really severe, you get no meat, no dal. See, a lot of people, they feel okay on like a meat or chicken, but it doesn't help it heal. So that's a problem. So then they get stuck in limbo. Now, I have seen some clients who had it figured out 70, 80%, but it took them a couple of years of suffering and trying different foods. And they could eat like a very strict diet. I remember one woman, she said, I'm only eating egg whites and avocados. And there was maybe one other food and sweet potato, and they even leave out things that they should put in. Like you should put in butter and ghee. I explain it like this. Think of you have a big rash, a big cut on your skin. Okay, big score. Maybe you fell on it, like a big carpet burn. It's real sensitive. Now, you're going to put vinegar on it? Hurts. You're going to put chili pepper on it? Hurts. You're going to put butter on it? Feels better. So unfortunately, a lot of people, they leave too many things out, and they leave out butter and ghee, which actually helps the condition. So butter feels good, but that's an easy way to think about it. You get a squash, a zucchini, and scrub it all over your arm. You don't feel nothing. Try squeezing the juice of a tomato on your cut and see how that feels. Then you'll understand why you leave out tomatoes. Or even get a piece of cauliflower raw and rub it on your skin. See how that feels. It hurts. It's too rough. In Ayurveda, that's what they call it. No rough foods. It has to be smooth, like mushy sweet potato. Even some people can't even do the skin of the sweet potato once it's advanced. They can only do the inside. And if you think about it, if you rubbed your arm with a sweet potato, then probably the skin would be a little irritating, but not the inside cooked. Like a couple of my clients called it baby food with a lot of butter. And sweet things are good too. People panic. They don't do any fruit, but coconut water helps. Mango juice helps, but lemon juice makes it worse. So I see people recommending lemon juice, apple cider vinegar, and no dairy. Well, they're going in completely the wrong direction. And that's what I just saw while I was on, some social media sites where they had IBS groups. I posted this event there. I hope some of you were able to join me. So the diet really has to be specific, but you got the idea. And I have talked about it probably in more detail in the past. Now we have different teas. Now, if there's not too much pain, but there's just a weakness in digestion, because IBS comes from poor digestion and wrong foods. That's it. You don't inherit it. So this one here, we call Pitta digestive tea. And this really helps with some people to a large degree. It's helping them to deal with a lot of these symptoms. And you can see right there the ingredients. Spearmint, which you really don't need the spearmint. I could even leave it out. Fennel, coriander, a little cumin, little cinnamon, a little cardamom. It's a very mild, it says very gentle. It strengthens digestion before meals. So because IBS is a digestive problem, you have to make the digestion strong. And if you're eating all this warm, mushy food, you have to make the digestion a little stronger. That's why these bad advice of telling people eat little meals through the day doesn't fix the problem. I mean, it may feel okay because people who have it can't eat much because they're in pain. So they go down this trap of little meals, but then they never improve the digestion. So this improves your digestion. But if it's really bad, you can't do this one. But that one I do give if it's not too bad. But usually I give out this tea unfortunately, we were sold out, so I just printed the label. And I made this for IBS. It's called Soothing Gut Tea. I hope you learned something here. This has got 3 or 4 demulcents. Demulcent herbs are soothing, and they create a coating. See, it soothes the stomach, coats the intestinal lining, used for ulcers, and it's also a prebiotic. Of course, you got to take the probiotics here at a certain point, but you got to take the prebiotic. And look at that, marshmallow root, which is getting harder to get, by the way, slippery elm, and are the 2 main demulcents. And then comfrey root helps to heal tissue. We know comfrey root, we use it for healing wounds, so it's very important. And then licorice root is also demulcent. There's a little in there, kind of, it's a very slimy tea. You put it in your mouth and you feel like this mucus down here, and it's very slimy. So when you eat it, you just feel it soothing. I think we called it something else before, and everybody said that tea is so soothing. So another little trick is when you have it bad, particularly if you have a stomach ulcer, you can't have water. People say drink a lot of water. No, when it's bad, don't drink any water. See, this is why it's hard for people to understand this condition, is because it goes against nutrition. It goes against what you're told. You don't drink water. You don't care about nutrition. You're trying to resolve the inflammation as fast as possible. And the problem people have is they do very restrictive diets because they're just avoiding everything. Like the woman only doing eggs and avocados and sweet potatoes. That's what she was living on, because the only thing is it bother. But unfortunately, these type of people, they lose a lot of weight. So most of my clients, by the time they've tried everything from social media, the medical doctor, they do the medical doctor first, then they do social media for a couple of years, try all that, and then they come to me, and you can see from my testimonials, 2-3 days, they're getting better, because I have experience. It's and they've got the herbs. See, they've got the herbs. They got that soothing gut tea. So I tell them right off the bat, stop water. Drink the soothing gut tea like water between the meals on an empty stomach, and take the probiotics along with it because it's a prebiotic. So then, we're starting to soothe the intestinal lining, can start to heal it a little bit with that comfrey. And then you're taking the probiotics, the healthy bacteria that gets in there. Now, so that's part of it. And that's why you have to do this treatment quickly. People drag it on for years, and meanwhile, they're just losing weight and getting thinner and weaker. So you don't want that. I try to treat it as fast as possible because it's not a nutritionally sound diet. Generally, you can't have any meat. And if it's severe, you can't have any beans. Now, if it's not too bad, you can give you mung beans and rice, either white rice if you have diarrhea, brown rice if you don't, and cooked vegetables, and a little sweet fruit between the meals. So this is not a lot to live off of, but it's just meant to not make the condition worse and not have them losing weight. So they can still eat 3, sometimes 4 meals a day. And then in between, they have the soothing gut tea, and maybe the digestive tea helps them to make the digestion stronger. So when it's time to eat, and then in between the meal, they have the soothing gut tea, which is really easy. Any demulcents will work in that case. Now, then it really splits between the 2 types, between the Pitta type, who's got looser stools and a lot of diarrhea, and the Vata type. If there's a lot of multiple cases, a lot of diarrhea, then of course we just give you the diarrhea formula, which I've had around for a long time. It helps with malabsorption, excessive bowel movements, and the key herb, if you're familiar with Ayurveda, is bilva, and katuj, which is for loose stools and diarrhea. But it's also got a very famous formula called Dadimastika Churna, which is actually for digestion and used in the irritable bowel formula, IBS formula, which I'm going to show you next. But and then Kamaduda is very cooling, bringing down Pitta. Lajalud is a super demulcent and super slimy. In fact, the whole formula is slimy. Arjuna helps the tissue heal. Shankpasma is the shell from the powdered shell from ocean, like a conch shell, they call it. Just a little bit of powder in there. And that, of course, brings down the acidity. We use it in the acidity formula. Now, we'll give them that at night if there's a lot of diarrhea, but most people never finish a jar because that's going to take care of it so fast. And then if there's a lot of pain initially, we will give out the abdominal pain formula. And this has mostly been used with stomach ulcers. And there you can see a lot more Shank Basma. Goduchi is an anti-inflammatory, but the main ingredient is called Shank Basma. And this is a type of processed shell. It's like putting out the stomach acid and bringing down inflammation. Then we really need to, we have two, and that's the first stage. Oh, we got the IBS formula too. Don't let me forget. We're just sold out. So all I got is the label. Let me show you here. There we go. We're sold out. IBS formula. There it is. You take this before meals, but you got to be careful with this formula. If there's too much pain, you can't do it because it does have a little cumin in it, and pomegranate. See, pomegranate is a home remedy for IBS. Drink a little pomegranate, and sugar cane is also. See, they're both in there. Now there is a little pepper and ginger. That's why you have to be careful with this formula. In stage 4, you can't use it, but you can use it in the early stages. This IBS formula. You have to know when to use it, when not to use it, that formula. If there's heavy bleeding, a lot of diarrhea, don't use it. Use the abdominal pain formula, use the soothing gut formula, use the diarrhea formula, get the diarrhea under control. It's really kind of stages. It's not like, oh, here's the cure. People text me, oh, you cured my cousin of IBS. What herbs should I take? I don't have the money to pay you. Most of these clients are probably taking 100 herbs. Those are formulas, and some of those formulas are formulas inside of formulas. So one of these formulas, like could have a lot of herbs in it. So once we get the diarrhea under control, we get the bleeding under control. We have another herb. If you're familiar with Ayurveda, or you're studying Ayurveda, you should know this herb called Nakashar. Nakashar, it's in the IBS formula, but only a little bit. But it's for bleeding. So if a person says they have a lot of bleeding, I could take either one of these formulas, abdominal pain formula, even the diarrhea formula, put in a bigger jar, add more Nakashar, and give it to them until the bleeding stops, and then I could go back to it. So, you still customize. If there's bleeding, I'm adding more Nakashar to usually one of the evening formulas. But once we got the bleeding under control, once we got the pain under control, we got them on the right diet so it's not getting worse. Of course, they're having no coffee, no chocolate, no hot spices, and they're eating mushy baby food every day. Then the second stage, which could take a couple weeks later, then we have 2 formulas. And we call, and these were made for this condition, healing gut formula. And you can see a lot of the same. This is for Vata. This is a person who gets constipated easy. And there you can see that similar herbs. Arjuna heals, Bala strengthens, Bilva is for diarrhea, Katuj is for loose stools, Kamaduta brings down the heat, and there's the Lajalut. So that's one formula. And the other formula is for Pitta, where there's more loose stools. The herbs are actually very similar. It's just a little bit of arrangement with the herbs. Initially, I only had one, and then I made custom formula for a person. So the Pitta one is if you have loose stools, no constipation, and a lot of loose stools, and more burning. And the Vata one is if you're having loose and constipated, and less burning sensation. In other words, less Pitta. Those usually come in second stage. So first, you just have to get the diarrhea under control, get them on the diet, because the diet makes a big difference. In just a week, the diet is a big difference, even days. Plus, you get him on the coconut water, a little pomegranate juice, and coconut water, and the soothing gut. I've had people who did the soothing gut plus pomegranate juice. It was fantastic. Or pomegranate juice and coconut water together. But don't be drinking water all day long. And you can't have any meat. There's no meat, no fish, no chicken, no poultry, nothing salty. It's a baby diet. And then if you're not too bad, then you can do mung dal, but it's all soupy and cooked well. And I'd even have some spices. I didn't bring them here, but I do have a really mild spice blend called Pitta seasoning. And that's okay if there's no bleeding. That's the whole trick of the treatment, is to, understand the individual condition. And for me, I'm not having the condition. I'm only getting the information from the client. And it can change. Like I can meet a person and start that loose stool, that diarrhea and pain. 2 weeks later, they got no pain, no diarrhea. Now they're constipated. Oh my God, I have to change the formulas. And as their digestion starts to get better and they have less symptoms, I can add more foods on that I couldn't add on before. So I can slowly change the diet. And you don't want to say, make it too restrictive. That's a big mistake people make. They make radically restrictive diets and then they start losing a lot of weight and deplete. And of course, there's other side effects and symptoms of IBS, and that's like anemia, nutritional deficiencies, B12 deficiencies, et cetera, because you're not absorbing your food. It's passing. The whole mucosa lining inside of the colon is all inflamed. There's no healthy bacteria there helping you digest. It's passing through too fast, and you become very weak and very tired. So I always encourage people, don't delay treatment. But so far, everybody has. Everybody puts it off until it's so bad, and then they contact me. So I can only hope that some of you learned to avoid the triggers, first of all. Off the coffee, off the chocolate, off the mushrooms, off the meat, and the dry foods, the snacking, the eating dry nuts, eating the dry granola. You got to stop all the triggers. Mushy, soft, warm food. Do that first, and then if you're in a more advanced stage, you're going to need the herbs. And do the coconut water. A little pomegranate juice is good for loose stools, and etc. So I hope that helped you out. I hope that helped you to at least avoid the triggers. And of course, if you're in the early stages, I think you're able to treat it by yourself with this information. But avoid hopping around, trying different diets. And if you're in the advanced stages, you have a lot of diarrhea, it's been dragging on for years, or there's bleeding, then you should do an appointment as soon as possible and stop suffering. Because the longer you have the bleeding, the more tricky it becomes to heal, because you've ulcerated your colon and you have a big wound down there. Now, there are other treatments that can be done too. I can make enema herbs that are put inside enema bag that can help the colon heal. And we put some really demulcent herbs in an enema bag and we put it in your colon, and gives you instant relief. This works for small children and animals because you can't get them to take the herbs. But even the animals, I can mix the herbs in ghee, and you should have a much higher fat diet too. Okay. Again, I just dictate it to each individual, and then each time they do a follow-up, often I have to change the formulas and change the diet as they're progressing. Then unfortunately, I do see a lot of relapses where people were fine for even 2-3 years. I'm not sure what took place in their life, but they relapsed. More than likely, they just relaxed too much on the diet, went back to some of those triggers, and then it came back. So you'll have to be careful the rest of your life, but you don't have to be so super restrictive as you think. Once you've healed the colon, that's why that last formula is really the most important formula, the healing gut formula. All right, folks, I hope that gave you hope, and I hope you tell your friends that there is a cure. There's no need to be guessing, and no need to be in, social media groups asking what to do. This is not the kind of condition that you want to mess around with too much yourself in these advanced stages where you got a lot of diarrhea, pain, and definitely bleeding. Please contact me. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I wish you the best of health and happiness. All right. There we go. Okay, folks. Yeah, somebody was asking me the other day, I used to put up a little discount, like if you went to the webinar live, because now I stopped recording. So now this part is not ever going to be recorded. So if you have any questions there, if you have any questions, folks, now's your chance. I think the sun went down outside, so I feel less inclined to go outside. So you got me for a little bit. Okay. Anybody with IBS? Anybody with IBS? Anybody who came from all my Facebook posting? I spent a couple hours just pasting on Facebook and all these IBS groups, hoping to reach people until they banned me. Lucky I posted in people's comments, they let me do it, but the person managing the site didn't even let me post this group. So I'm not sure what people's motives are, why they have these support groups for conditions, but when somebody starts posting in there with a class or testimonials, I get banned. All right. Well, anyway, everybody looks pretty happy over there. I don't see a lot of questions, so we'll call it a night. Please share with your friends. And if you just want a few herbal products, you can always go to my public site, herbmanteas.com. And I do have none of the products that I showed you today are on there, none, because they're a little more specialized. Probably this Pitta digestive tea may go up there one day, but not the rest. Those you need an appointment. I have to pick them. I have to customize them for you. But I do have other products on Herban Teas that anybody can buy without an appointment. Otherwise, if you want an appointment, just contact my office, or you can book right from my website, Khabir's Clinic.com. Okay. I hope that helped you out. I hope you learned something, and I hope you avoid the triggers if you do have IBS. God bless all of you. Thank you very much.